Welcome to Grace Fellowship Baptist Church Wednesday evening Bible study for Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. Today is Sunday, June 12th, 2022, and we had a great worship in the Lord this morning. Oscar had a great sermon. If you haven't heard it yet, you need to go out and watch it. He had some very good points. He summed up uh, Galatians in a sermon, one of the best summaries I've seen that short. Uh, Excellent sermon, excellent points. Today we are in the book of Ruth. We're in the third chapter. So let's start in verse 1. One day Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not try to find a home for you where you will be well provided for? Is not Boaz, with whose servants girls you have been, a kinsman of ours? Tonight he will be winnowing barley in the threshing floor. Wash and perfume yourself, and put on your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. Now, pause there for a moment. Naomi is conspiring. She's trying to play matchmaker. She doesn't have the standing in the community to be the matchmaker for the community. She's come back, but she's trying to do her best. And if you think she's trying to get Ruth to seduce Boaz, in one sense, she'd be right. She's trying to get his attention, trying to say, "Hey, I'm available. My daughter-in-law is available." Uh, Ruth is probably totally aware that Naomi is what she's trying to do. Boaz is a kinsman redeemer. We've noted that in chapters before, and has been providing for uh, Ruth by letting her glean among the harvesters. We know that this account actually happened earlier than the end of chapter 2 because he's going to be winnowing barley. That means that the barley has been harvested and they're now in the process of processing it so it can be stored. It's been dried. They're going to thresh it and then winnow it. And so they're mid-harvest. You don't do that while you're picking the grain, and you don't do it. Well, you got to do it before you start harvesting the wheat, which is the next grain harvest. In between, there's some other smaller harvest, including the grape harvest, some fruits and stuff. So they're still in that very busy part of the harvesting season, and let's face it, they have to. After they've harvested it all, after they've sun-dried it, they thresh it, they throw it up in the air to blow the chaff out of it. They've worked all day doing that. They have this big pile of grain just sitting on essentially the pavement, and they're going to do it again tomorrow. It's beginning to be the time of year where it's comfortable to be outside at night, and it's not too hot. It's not going to be too cold. It's not going to be raining. And the practical thing is, somebody sleeps next to the grain to guard it. In fact, probably several somebodies. Most of the workers that have been threshing and winnowing all day, they're probably going to be, out there on their cots. in their bedrolls and then just laying out there. Why leave the field? Why walk into town? Why walk into the house has been baking in the sun all day. There's no air conditioning. It's going to be warm. Lay down out here. All you got to do is when you know you're going to be doing this and working 18-hour days and then sleeping, or 16-hour days and then sleeping and getting back up and do it again tomorrow, bring his bedroll with you and be there for a few days. So, and apparently it's the last day of the wintering. After this, they'll be picking up the barley and taking it to storage. That's actually a fairly fast process compared with harvesting it, threshing it, winnowing it, and then they'll go on to the next task. But Boaz, being the owner, is going to be out there with it. He really can't, probably being an old man, he probably doesn't do much of the labor. He may not sleep soundly. But let's face it, somebody starts messing with it, he's going to be the guy that wakes up easily and can call on everybody else, And he's going to be the guy that celebrates with them. That, hey, we had a great harvest, great job, guys. He's going to eat the meal with them. Because he's going to eat the meal with them, everybody gets to eat better. And that's part, he's going to reward his workers with a feast, and then they're going to lay down, sleep. And Naomi knows what night the feast is. It'd be pretty easy to keep up with that gossip. And tells her, hey, get dressed in your good clothes, take a bath, smell good, look your best. And then, go to the feast with him, celebrate with him, and note where he lays down. And then go uncover his feet and lay down next to him. She knows that uncovering his feet is going to wake him up. Ruth, if she walked quietly and just lay down there, she might be able to sleep all night and nobody notice anything. But uncovering your feet, have you ever, been in bed and the sheet and the blanket got untucked and your feet poked out? Didn't it bother you? You woke up in the middle of the night knowing my feet aren't covered. You probably actually woke up pretty quick once your feet weren't covered. That's fairly typical. He's probably laying on a blanket with a blanket over him or sheet over him. So it's just pretty easy to fold the sheet up, fold the blanket up, and now his feet are uncovered. They would have worn sandals. The socks weren't a thing yet. You don't wear sandals to bed. So he's in bed barefooted. So as soon as the blanket's not over his feet, he's going to be waking up, getting ready. And if she's laying there, he's going to be aware of who should be at his brain pile. I mean, he's the one to keep up with it and keep up with everybody. And here is somebody new. It's going to alert him that something's going on, and he's going to investigate. When he finds out who it is, there's some cultural significance there. It was a polite way, without directly saying anything and therefore being rude, for a woman to ask for him to protect her. The implication is protect her by marrying her. There were other ways he could do so. He could, provide for her. He could hire her as a servant in his household, or a servant in his farm, or you know, there was other things he could legally do that were less intensive and less secure necessarily than marry her. But it's not the only thing he could do. But from what Naomi said, she knows that that's probably going to be his first choice if he doesn't. Um, he can actually arrange for a marriage. Got the standing in the community that he would know who is eligible to marry her, and he would know the lineage and uh, the order of who should marry her first by the Levirate requirements, and who's second, third, and fourth in the line, whatever, and therefore who to offer uh, Ruth the marriage to. Um, she's basically asking not necessarily for Boaz to marry her, but Boaz to protect her for the rest of her life and provide for her for the rest of her life. He doesn't have to do it personally. He does. He's being asked to deal with it. And right at the end of the barley harvest, um, there could be a few days in there where he can do business before they get back to harvesting again. Um, the harvest season is not just, you work hard continuously until the next harvest starts, and then you start doing something different, and you hope you finish one before the other. There was generally a few days between that you could sit and relax after having a hard few weeks, and then rest up, and then the next one starts and you get busy again, and then you rest up, and there's a few days, and then you start harvesting the next crop. And so if he's windowed and all it is storage, um, that's a few days where everybody's going to be doing business. If they've got debts to pay that they need to go haul their grain into town and sell it and then go pay their debts, or go haul the grain to the one who they have the debt to and pay the debt with grain or whatever, that's going to be when that kind of thing gets done. People are going to be moving around. People are going to be doing business. Um, the first harvest is done, and so it's now time to, start getting onto that neglected business that you haven't done for the last few weeks while you've been harvesting and storing and processing, and and so it's an opportune time. This is before the end of the rest of the harvest season. So the first 23 in chapter 2, Ruth stayed with the servant girls uh, until the barley and wheat harvest were finished. Um, this is between the barley and wheat harvest. So she's doing this in the middle of harvest season. And Boaz understands what she says, understands what she is going to ask for. We'll deal with that here in just a second. Ruth is obedient to her mother-in-law. She understands some of this cultural form. It may be a different culture, and things may be a little bit different. She may be having to be told, how do the Jews do it? How do the Israelites do it? But she's not unfamiliar with what's being asked, she's being asked to do, and she's totally fine with this. She may not understand all the cultural implication that the Israelites would have with that. In Moab, a woman going to the threshing floor like that might actually be inviting a sexual encounter. I would say an assault, but in that culture, if you went to the the barley threshing floor like that at night, nobody in Moab would have said it was an assault. You invited it. Why'd you go there if you didn't want it? It was a time of celebration. The end of the harvest even if it's mid harvest season, the end of one harvest, it was a celebration. And most of the cultures around Israel, sexual practice was a part of that. You know, some of them explicitly, they had an orgy at the end of the harvest uh, to celebrate with. The Moabites, we don't know totally what they had and what they would have been doing at that time because their practices did change through the centuries. Um, but they were not as clean in their morality as Israel. Israel had a high view of morality, high view of purity. Um, Ruth the Moabitess might have been going, did I just ask to be married on the barley floor? But she was obedient to her mother in law. Um, she probably would have been like, if that's the way to do it, that's the way to do it. Um, she would have been very interested in asking for without being too upfront. Um, Among the Israelites, particularly, if the woman was too upfront, she would have been viewed as impure and immoral and a harlot, a prostitute. Uh, that's part of the characteristic they would have assigned to that because of that. That's just the way they would have thought about it. If you're too forward with it, the woman obviously isn't moral. Now, uh, that's not necessarily true, but that's the way that their culture would have interpreted it. Um, Moab, such constraints weren't near as serious, but even then, all of the Middle East, particularly at that time, was definitely a male-oriented culture, very paternalistic culture. Women would have recognized they were subservient, and being too forward uh, could backfire on you. And if you were too forward, the man might feel threatened and like, nope, sorry. So she understands the need for being subtle and gentle and polite. And so, therefore, she's paying attention to Naomi, her mother in law, how to do it. And she agrees to do it exactly like her mother in law asked her to do. Verse 7. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and he was in good spirits, he went over to lay down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man, and he turned and discovered a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I'm your servant Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you were a kinsman redeemer. So now we get the interaction between them. Um, the Bible is very polite about it. He has a feast, he gets drunk, he goes lays down at the end of the pile. Now, he probably was not drunk. He was. The Jews were people who they allowed drinking and they preferred sobriety. At a party like this, if you went slightly over the line but you didn't go excessively, they probably just kind of pretended you didn't. Particularly if you're the owner, if you didn't cause any problems. He, you know, this translation says he was in good spirits. The Hebrew word implies he was right at the line of what was considered drunk. Um, he might not have been drunk, but he was beyond what normally was considered polite. Um, but let's face it, it's a celebratory time. He celebrated, and he stops right at that line. Nobody would have been faulting him. And then he goes down to the far end. The workers are going to be near at that end. Somebody's got to guard the far end. He's going to be by himself. He's you know, just to make sure nobody sneaks up on the other side. Uh, and he's not wanting to be disturbed. That's part of it. Um, he can let the workers do their thing. He'll pretend he doesn't see if anybody does anything in excess. Um, he'll pretend he didn't see his men invite their wives to the grain field and everybody um, enjoy their wives. Um, yeah, it's a celebratory time. Just keep it low down, and we're all good, kind of thing. And he goes to the far end. He's already celebrated what he's going to do, and he plans to sleep the night. We do get the implication because it's the middle of the night when he wakes up that he had had enough to drink that he um, went to sleep and didn't wake up when his feet were disturbed. She went over quietly. She uncovered his feet. She lay down. When he wakes up in the middle of the night, he's not alone. Well, if some of his servants had been there with him, he would have like, oh, okay, I'm in, and gone back to sleep. Been a little bit grumpy that his feet were uncovered and covered them back up. But he discovers a woman. Now, that's shocking. The woman weren't going to be sleeping outside. That just wasn't, it wasn't safe. Um, yeah, it's probably pretty safe territory. Um, in reality, most of the community's been harvesting. Most of the community's been hard at work, and the ones that are not, they were going to be sneaking around, not trying to stay in place. They, go in and grab a bushel of grain and disappear before anybody notices you're there, kind of thing. Be a thief. Or if there were prostitutes in Israel and they got hired to be it there, they might, ply their business, but they wouldn't want to stay around until morning to get caught there. People know that they were there. They were going to get their business done and go. Um, you know, and so it's a little bit of a mystery to him. He knows it shouldn't be, but he's investigating, and he asks, who are you? So she answers, I'm Ruth. I'm Ruth, your servant. And she very politely asks that she be protected as he's a kinsman redeemer. Now, it could be interpreted as a marriage proposal. It could be interpreted as when harvest is over, watch over us, make sure that we're part of the community and that we get our share of charity, and that, even if we work hard, we don't fall through the cracks, that the clan supports us. It wasn't inherently that she's asking to be his wife. She's just asking that he be the lead player in making sure that Naomi and she are provided for. And now, the simplest way to do that is for her to be his wife. That's the simplest, most direct. He's been protecting her during the harvest. She's spent roughly a month at this point in time with his harvester. She's been gleaning. His servant, the men haven't bothered him. The ladies get to knowing him, knowing her. She's getting to know the community. She's being there with them. She's involved herself in the clan socially, and she's been felt protected. And she knows that Boaz will be responsible, and that's what she's saying. Be responsible to me and fulfill the duty. You be the lead guy that fulfills the duty the clan has to us. She's explicitly, legally asking that the clan recognize that she's Naomi's daughter-in-law, that she's Elimelech's daughter-in-law, that she's Mahlon's wife, and that she's therefore part of the clan, and that they provide for her. Verse 10, "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am near of kin, there is a kinsman redeemer nearer than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem, good, let him redeem. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." So he knows the social structure. He knows that there's one person closer to redeem Ruth and to marry her than he. He will arrange that if that man will marry her. He'll arrange the marriage and have her married off. If, on the other hand, that guy is not willing to, and he may know enough to know that this will actually risk his inheritance, because if Ruth's son inherits Elimelech's fields, that man may not then inherit any other fields, and therefore any other children he has won't inherit. That could be problematic, and the rules as we know them, or from a later time after the monarchy had helped write things down, but we get the idea that they would be been kind of built up by case law, piece by piece, to keep things fair and just and equitable. And a man could threaten his own inheritance if he tried to grasp too much and marry a widow, and therefore his children by her inherited somebody else's land, and he got land, and he could become by strategic marriage become a very wealthy man without any effort of his own, other than just running the household. This was not good for the community, and so the laws were, the traditions were such that you couldn't do too much. If you tried that, then you wouldn't inherit from your part of the family, and some of your brothers would get your share. Well, that could, depending upon how much it was, impoverish your children. Wouldn't be smart to do it. And so this is apparently the situation for this other guy. And Boaz knows that. Boaz has worked hard all his life. He's acquired things appropriately. He's gotten wealthy bit by bit by bit, and gotten more fields and more lands and more wealth. And he's gotten to this place. Yeah, he's wealthy. He's old. His children by other wives have already they know what they're going to inherit. It's not going to affect them any. And he knows that Naomi is, she's not been running after other men. She's not been chatting other men up. She's not been flirting around. People know from having talked to her for a month. They know her character. They know she's not just chasing men. They know she's not chasing an inheritance, trying to get the property. And let's face it, with this kind of thing, the property is the big part, not the marriage. That's how the clan viewed it. Who gets the property? And in this kind of marriage, as long as they had sex once, the community wouldn't have cared. Okay, you had once, you consummated it, you're married. Um, if you now kind of live over here and you over here and y'all don't get along, um, just don't cause problems for the community. And you know, she gets to inherit. She has the property. He gets to work the property until he dies. He, everything's good. And the implication is this is a June December kind of marriage. She's young. He's old. Um, you know, he's not chasing her to get a young wife. She's not chasing him to get a wealthy man. She's just trying to get the property that her father-in-law used to have, so that you know she and Naomi can have an inheritance and have property and work it and get income from it. Even if they don't farm it, they can rent it out. You know, and so Boaz knows that, and he is willing to take on this lead responsibility to provide for her and say, okay, the other guy, there's, yeah, I can do it, but there's another guy that is closer uh, and closer to your age, and if he'll do that responsibility, good, great. Not, then I can do it, and says I will do it tomorrow, and tells her just lie down to morning. There's the implication there. There's nothing else that goes on between them. They had a small conversation in the middle of the night. He makes a promise, and he doesn't want her sneaking off, because that could cause problems too. Then she might be accused of being a thief, and people would turn that she's not as nice as we think she is, and that would cause all kinds of problems for all kinds of people. Even just a false accusation, because there'd be no way to disprove it. So he says, lay down till morning. So 14. So she laid his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. So it's still dark. And he said, don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. He knows the social thing, that the women who come to the threshing floor, they're not there for good purposes. The implication is they're sexually loose. They're getting something for helping men celebrate. Now, she laid his feet. She didn't cuddle up against him. She was not. She was appropriate and proper, but he doesn't want her telling her they're around. For one thing, that's going to complicate his task of going into town and doing this business he's promised to do. Because then the community might think he was the immoral one, that he pushed himself on her, and that would cause other problems. And it's before anybody can be recognized, just going out, people up and stirring, but you can't recognize anybody, just kind of leave. Why? Verse 15. He also said, bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out. When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and put it on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, how did it go, my daughter? Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her and added, he gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today. Naomi knows Boaz and knows that once he made a promise, he's going to fulfill it. And Boaz was helping provide for Naomi and Ruth. He's going to give them grain even if the other man marries Ruth and provides for it and takes the leave right promise and deals with it and agrees to provide it. Boaz is making this very practical, symbolic gesture. Uh, we don't know what the size of the measure was. It was basically a scoop. Um, uh, 6 measures didn't overfill her shawl. She could hold it, but it was also enough grain that she had to carry it on her back in the shawl. So, you know, you get them, if you picture that, uh, you get a grasp of how much she's giving. It's a generous gift, but it's not like going to provide for them all year. But it's several weeks worth of food, maybe several months. Shawls could be pretty big pieces of cloth, not quite as large as a blanket, but they could be pretty good size, the size of a robe. And so, depends upon how big her shawl was. Some of the things that are basically unknowable. How big the measure was, it's again unknowable. Um, she's got food, so he's making this symbolic promise that you're going to be provided for, and it's a very practical promise. You know, take this to Naomi. Naomi has to have food. Yeah, you've been winnowing all month and gleaning all month, and you've been picking up, and we know you've been collecting good amounts, but don't go empty-handed. And the implication here is, I'm making a promise that you will be provided for, both you and Naomi. And so she goes back. Naomi sees this, understands the implication that this is a, a symbolic gift, a symbolic promise, but also a practical one. Here, you have at least this much food, even if somebody else does the providing later. You're going to start off with this much grain that y'all didn't have to harvest. Somebody else harvested, threshed, winnowed. He's giving a gift. Um, you know, and Naomi knows that that means he's dedicated to seeing the task done. That Boaz is going to make sure they are provided for. And she tells Ruth, be calm. Just trust. Oh, just sit here, wait. He will not rest until he does it. Now, it is a day, because it's after the harvest, it is a day of commerce. People are going to be around. Most people are going to be finished with their harvest and storing it. But that also means a lot of the people are going to be going to town, doing business, and it's very highly likely that this man will be around that Boaz was talking about and into town and doing business. And everybody knows that. Somebody from every household is going to be in town, kind of thing. That's just kind of the day it is. And it's how long does it take to do it? Well, Boaz is a rich enough man that if he had some business he meant to do in town that day and he can't get it done, he can basically tell one of his other servants, hey, I know I was going to go, do this, but I need you to cover me and go do that for me. And, I've got some other business I got to tend to. And nobody's going to question him. Okay, my boss assigned me a task that he meant to do, but something's come up and he needs to deal with something else. Okay, I go do it. And, Boaz has the freedom, economic freedom, that he doesn't have to conduct business that day. And he probably has servants to do it, even if it does, even if it's more profitable to do it that day. He can take whatever time it takes to find this man and get this business done. And because he's made that promise and he's kind of sealed it with this gift of grain, that's going to be his most important task that day. Even if it takes all day sitting at the gate of the city, watching for this man and then doing the business, and it's evening and he goes home. That's what he's going to do. So, you know, Naomi knows that's Boaz's character, and it may take him all day. You know, if the Lord blesses, it might be fast, uh, but you know, Boaz is going to take care of it. Um, so that's kind of where I'm going to leave it. We're in the middle of the story. Boaz has made a promise. Um, we have this interaction and see that Boaz has promised that Ruth and Naomi are going to be taken care of by the clan. Um, he says, "Yeah, I'm somebody who might be the one to marry you, but there's somebody else that could, and I will take care of the business of making sure somebody does." Um, he doesn't promise that he's going to do it. He the implication even in the Hebrew is that if something else comes up and somebody that might be a kinsman redeemer that's even further away than him requests it and has good reason for it, he might pass on to somebody else. Is the implication? He's just going to make sure that they are taken care of and that it's arranged. Now, the marriage that does it may not happen that day. It may be later. It may be after all the harvest season when people have some time to rest and celebrate. And, you know, but the transaction, the planning, the community involvement part will already be done. Everybody will know when it is. Just like today, you know, a couple doesn't necessarily get married the day after the engagement. It takes, you know, a while to plan the ceremony and get it done and prepare, you know, where you're going to live and how you're going to put two households together or build a household or whatever the arrangement's going to be. You know, even after it's agreed to, it takes some time. And what Boaz has promised is, I will make sure that you get that arrangements made. That's what he's promised. He's going to make sure that there's the arrangements made so that Ruth can be married and have children, and her children inherit Elimelech's land, and the land was the important part to the clan. Who gets the land? It's toward the end, it's the harvest season, which means the land's fixing to lie fallow for a little while. The implication is the land, somebody has rented it out, or the clan has assigned somebody to farm it so it doesn't lie just wild and they get the crop. And the implication is Ruth and Naomi and whoever she marries is going to get that land at the beginning of next season. So this is not just Boaz and Ruth and Naomi involved. The whole community is going to be involved. Somebody was farming it this year. They have a crop on it. If they had barley on it, it might have just been harvested and it's a fallow field. If they have wheat on it, it'll be a few weeks before they start harvesting the wheat, and then, you know, it'll be a fallow field. Unlikely they built a grape orchard, a grape vineyard, or a olive orchard on the land while they were gone. If there was one already there, it was still being maintained. They weren't just going to ignore it and leave it wild. They would be, you know, continuing to deal with it and harvest the grapes or harvest the olives and deal with those. The community was not going to let an investment like that go to waste. Um, on the other hand, if they're there, come next year, it's your responsibility to tend it, and you'll get the harvest. You know, if it's just fields and they can garden it, they can grow crops on it, grain or whatever, then next year you'll get to plant and reap it and tend it and harvest it. So that's what he's promising is you're going to get your Elimelech's lands back, and next year you'll be able to farm. Don't know who with yet. Well, that's what I'm promising is that today I'll go to town and we'll negotiate that and figure it out. And that's what he's promised. They will be provided for. Somebody will get to farm the land. It will become Ruth's children's land. That is part of the Social Security system that they had. I don't mean to use that in the term that we do, or Social Security, but the implication is it's just part of the social welfare system of the land. Somebody has a right to use the land. Now, they had the concept that God owned the land, and they were just borrowing it until they died, basically. But it's a lifelong ownership, so to speak. They would have to pass it on to their children, who would, but you were just a steward of God's land, and it's now turned for Ruth and her future children to get this right to this land, and Boaz is going to make sure it happens. It's God's provision. The whole theme of Ruth is God unseen hand at work, even in society, even in day-to-day activities. Let's face it, Boaz could have been upset. It was kind of a taboo for women to be on the threshing floor. It was man's area. We're camping for the night. He could have been mad at her and kicked her out and made a fuss, and you can go glean somebody else's fields. The implication is obviously he did not, because she gleaned. We know in chapter 2 she gleaned the wheat harvest in his fields, so he's not upset with her. He's just going to begin the process of getting her provided for. Gracious Lord, you are the Lord of provision. You provided for Naomi. You provided for Ruth. You provided through Boaz, but he wasn't assured that he was going to be the one that provided for them there, that he would get the profit from them, that get to be the husband. He, though, took his responsibility seriously. Lord, help us to be those kind of people that, even when it's uncertain, we take our responsibility seriously, and we do it to the best of our abilities, and we serve one another humbly and correctly, with vigor. We pay attention to it, do it to the best of our ability. Lord, help us to be generous like Boaz was. I didn't just make the promise and then say, go home and be full, but said, hey, open your shawl, let me put something in it and give you a gift. That we would be that kind of people. That we would be kind to each other. That we would take care of each other. That we would treat each other kindly and well. In your holy name, amen. I hope to see you Wednesday at the Bible study. And if not, I hope to see you Sunday at worship. And if not, I will see you back here on YouTube. Have a blessed week.